The first check she wrote him was $12,000, and she wrote it with complete confidence. She had done her research. She had checked his contractor's license with the state licensing board. It was valid. She had called two of the references he provided. Both spoke well of him. She had gotten 3 separate bids for the project, and his had come in second lowest, which her son always said was the sweet spot. Not the cheapest and not the most expensive, but the one that suggested competence without desperation. His name was Terry Bullock. He had a truck with a logo on the door. He wore a clean shirt to the estimate appointment and brought printed materials about his company's history and insurance coverage. He had a firm handshake and looked her in the eye when he spoke. She was 66 years old. Her name was Elaine Marsh. She had retired the previous year after 28 years as an office manager at a dental practice, and she had just made the decision, with some grief and some relief, and the particular complexity of emotions that only people who have lost someone understand, to renovate the house she and her husband Carl had lived in for 31 years. Carl had passed away 14 months earlier. The house needed a new roof, updated electrical, a kitchen renovation, and repairs to the back porch that he had always meant to get to but never had. Elaine had decided that fixing the house was a way of honoring the life they had built in it, and of making it fully hers now, and of taking the kind of decisive, forward-facing action that grief counselors talked about, but that was much harder in practice than it sounded in their offices. She was ready to begin. She was not ready for what Terry Bullock was about to do to her. Today, I am going to tell you the story of Elaine Marsh, a 66-year-old retired office manager from Indiana who lost $214,000 to a contractor who took her money, abandoned her home half demolished, and disappeared, and who spent the next 16 months proving that disappearing is not the same as escaping. This is a story that happens in every state in this country, every single day, to homeowners who did everything right, who checked the license, who called the references, who got multiple bids, who did exactly what they were supposed to do, and got robbed anyway. And it is a story about what happens when the person being robbed decides to become, in the words of the attorney who eventually represented her, the most organized and determined clients she had worked with in 22 years of practice. Elaine and Carl had bought the house in 1991. It was a 4-bedroom colonial on a quiet street, more house than they needed for just the two of them, but Carl had loved the yard and Elaine had loved the neighborhood, and they had never seriously considered leaving. They had raised their 2 children there. They had hosted 30 years of Thanksgiving dinners and birthday parties, and the occasional graduation gathering that spilled out onto the back porch that Carl kept meaning to fix. When Carl died, Elaine stayed. Her children had gently suggested she might consider something smaller, something easier, something that did not require as much upkeep for one person. She had listened to them patiently, and then told them she was not ready to leave the house, and that she would know when she was ready, and that fixing it up was what she needed to do right now. Her son Marcus helped her interview contractors. He sat in on 2 of the appointments, including the one with Terry Bullock, and had no particular reservations. Terry was professional and responsive, and his written estimate was detailed and itemized in a way that suggested someone who knew what he was doing. The contract they signed covered all 4 areas of work: roof, electrical, kitchen, and porch, with a total project cost of $188,000, structured as a series of payments tied to specific milestones. The first payment, due upon signing, was $12,000. Elaine wrote the check. Terry shook her hand. Work was scheduled to begin the following Monday. It did begin on Monday. That was the thing that made everything that followed so disorienting. It began on Monday, and for the first 6 weeks it appeared to proceed normally. A crew showed up, the old roof was torn off, the electrical work was started, the kitchen cabinets were removed and the walls opened. There was noise and dust and the daily presence of workers and the gratifying sense that something was being accomplished. During those 6 weeks, Terry Bullock made 4 additional payment requests. Each one was tied to a milestone described in the contract: completion of rough electrical, delivery of roofing materials, start of kitchen framing, ordering of custom cabinetry. Each one seemed reasonable. Each one was accompanied by invoices or receipts that made it look legitimate. Elaine paid each one. By the end of week 6, she had paid a total of $162,000 against the $188,000 contract. Then, on a Tuesday morning, in what should have been the 7th week of the project, nobody showed up. Elaine called Terry. He did not answer. She called again in the afternoon. He texted back saying there had been a supply delay and the crew would be there Thursday. They were not there Thursday. She called again Friday, and the call went to voicemail. The voicemail was full by Monday. By the end of the 2nd week of silence, Elaine understood that Terry Bullock was not coming back. She walked through her house and looked at what had been done. The roof was partially installed, the old one removed, underlayment laid, but the shingles only partially completed, leaving sections of the house covered with nothing but a blue tarp. The electrical was partially roughed in, but not completed or inspected. The kitchen was completely demolished, stripped to studs and subfloor, applications removed, no cabinets installed, no countertops, no sink, no fixtures. The back porch was partially torn down. Her house was uninhabitable in significant portions. She was living in a construction site. She had paid $162,000. She had no roof over parts of her house. She had no kitchen, and the man who had taken her money had vanished. She called her Marcus. He drove over that evening and walked through the house with her, and his face did the thing that adult children's faces do when they are trying very hard not to show their mother how alarmed they actually are. He said, "Mom, we are going to fix this, but first we need to understand exactly what we have." They started with the contractor's license. Elaine called the state licensing board and asked them to confirm Terry Bullock's license status. The woman she spoke to told her the license was currently under review following complaints filed by 2 other homeowners in the past 4 months. 2 other homeowners in the past 4 months. She wrote that down. She called the insurance company listed on the certificate of insurance Terry had given her at their first meeting. She asked to confirm coverage for Terry Bullock doing business as Bullock Home Solutions. The representative she reached told her, after a pause, that the policy had lapsed for non-payment 8 months ago. The insurance certificate Terry had given her was fraudulent. It showed a policy that had already lapsed before he had ever sat down at her kitchen table. She wrote that too. Over the following 10 days, while her son helped her arrange temporary repairs to make the house minimally livable, a contractor Marcus found through a neighbor agreed to complete the roof on an emergency basis for a cost Elaine paid out of her remaining savings. Elaine did what 28 years of office management had trained her to do. She organized everything she had. She had every check image, retrievable through her bank's online system. She had the original contract, signed and dated. She had all 4 supplemental payment requests, with the invoices and receipts Terry had attached to each one. She had the original estimate. She had the reference list he had provided and the notes from her calls with the references. She had the certificate of insurance. She had every text message she and Terry had exchanged, which she had the presence of mind to screenshot and save to a folder on her computer the same week he disappeared. She also spent 3 evenings searching public records. What she found was significant. Terry Bullock had operated under 3 different business names in the past 7 years. 2 of those businesses had been dissolved following complaints. There were 4 civil judgments against him in the county court records, totaling just over $80,000 from homeowners who had filed suits in previous years. 2 of those judgments remained unpaid. He had done this before, multiple times. The references he had given her were real people, and she went back and called them again, this time asking specifically whether their projects had been fully completed and paid for. One of them admitted with some embarrassment that the project had been completed only after significant delays and only after they threatened legal action. The other reference number had been disconnected. She took everything she had to an attorney named Sandra Osai, who specialized in construction law and contractor fraud. Sandra reviewed the documents for 2 days and then met with Elaine and told her several things. She said the lapsed insurance certificate was potentially criminal. Presenting a fraudulent insurance document to obtain a contract was a form of fraud in their state. She said the pattern of prior judgments and dissolved businesses established a history consistent with deliberate, repeated misconduct rather than simple business failure. She also said that Terry Bullock, despite having no current business address and a disconnected phone, was findable. He had a driver's license, he had a vehicle registration, he had a contractor's license that was under review rather than revoked, which meant he was still in the system. He had property records, even if they were complicated. She said, he is not gone, he has just made himself inconvenient to find. Sandra filed a civil lawsuit against Terry Bullock personally and against Bullock Home Solutions for breach of contract, fraud, and violations of the state's consumer protection statute.